remember, but I'll start things off by saying I'm going to be sending out a announcement email later on tonight after we're done with this session, basically laying out some things to try to expedite our process tomorrow. So given that we only have 50 minutes, there are 30 multiple choice and there are 10 matching. So 40 questions, 50 minutes. You're going to have to be pretty quick on everything. There is no penalty for guessing. So when it comes down to the very end, don't leave anything blank, please. At least give it a shot. Yeah.
There's no minus points.
Correct. No penalty for guessing at all. So what I'm planning on doing, I have everybody's exam, a formula sheet, and the Akindi form with your name on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in early, at least for the 9:30 class, and I'll have every other seat will have that set of book, the exam, the formula sheet, the Akindi form with your name. And I'm just going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and so on. And so that way, when you come into the room, just quickly kind of, I can direct you to whatever your last name starts with, okay, you're over here or you're over there, and then find your place, sit down quickly, put things away. You'll have a calculator, something to write with, and then everything else is on the tabletop. So, come in quick and ready, come in early if possible. The transition from the 9:30 to the 10:30 class is going to be a little dicier. I'm going to have to try to quickly lay things out. So if you're in the 9:30 class, I'm going to, when I call time, that's it. Drop pencils, turn in exams, and let's move on, because we only got like 10 minutes or less to make the switch over. I'm going to try to make sure that everybody has the full 50 minutes to actually work on the test. That's my goal. Other than that, and I'm not saying anything out of school in the sense that I'm going to have the same discussion in that email, but I thought I'd just tell you verbally while everybody is here. So let me open it up to questions that you have. Yes, how are you? Good. Are you doing good? Yes.
How many problems?
About half and half. Roughly speaking, they're about 15-ish problem types, and then the other 15-ish are more conceptual / definitional things. Yes.
Are we going to use all the formula sheets?
More than likely, not all of them. No. But I won't tell you which ones. I'm trying to make it, what I did was I took the exams that I've used in the past for a 75-minute class, and I basically cut it down by about a third. And since we have 50 minutes, that's about 2/3 of that time. More than likely, most of you are going to be working throughout most of that time period. I do curve exams. Usually my exams require a curve. So don't feel bad. It's not you. It's just that I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to show me as much as you've learned. If somebody gets done in 15 minutes, I feel like I haven't done my job. And I feel like I don't get a good sense of what you actually know. So plan on spending most of that time. There may be somebody who gets done in maybe 35, 40 minutes, but most of you are probably going to be there the whole time. So don't think that that's a bad sign. The other thing to keep in mind is that about half of the grade is really totally under your control, and that would be the homework, the reading, the CFA certification, and then the security analysis. And that makes up half the grade. The other half of the grade is the midterm and the final exam. So even if that score is not where you want it or where you might expect it in another class, remember those other classes might have 80% weight on exams. And then that score really matters much more. My goal is create incentive to give you effort, incentivize effort. And let's see how that effort turns out into learning.
You might have already said this, but is it on paper or is it on?
It is on paper. Okay. Totally on paper. And then you'll have the Akindi form to do the multiple choice. The matching goes on the test itself.
With the matching, you said that's 20%. Does that mean
Correct.
multiple choice are weighted more, obviously?
Yeah, the multiple choice matching are worth like 2% each, and the multiple choice are about 2 2/3.
So it's just a mix of multiple choice and matching?
Correct. Yeah. 40 questions total. So a little over a minute per question.
All the questions are going to look like the homework questions.
Yeah, yeah. That's again, I'm not trying to trick anybody. I mean, obviously they're going to be worded a little differently. There'll be different numbers and so on, but yeah, I draw it out of the test
At the
fact.
same time.
Yeah.
Are there questions from the readings as well, or is it just?
Yes.
Okay. readings
Yeah.
only?
About half will be analytical type problems, and then the other half of the multiple choice will be conceptual, definitional type stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, come on. Any problems that you want to talk about, you've had difficulty with? Any concepts that you want some clarification on? Happy to go through anything.
Chapter 6, can you just go over that again, like the constant federal growth, like model,
Sure.
where to see it in a question?
So let's see, was there something in the homework maybe?
Yeah, question that.
Yeah. Let's use that as kind of a platform, and then we can talk in general about it too. So let's see. Sustainable growth rate. You happen to have a question number that you know was about that, or do you know about where it was?
Mine's question 8 on chapter 6.
Question 8, all right. This one right
Yeah.
Okay, so in this particular one, we have cow juice just paid an annual dividend of $1.38. So whenever I'm reading a problem like this, I like to start writing down the particulars so that I don't have to go back to the problem necessarily. So for instance, on this, I would write D sub 0. $1.38. And I know that's D sub 0 because it says an annual dividend was just paid. So that was an instant ago, and I'm standing at time 0 presumably, unless I'm told otherwise. The firm has a policy of increasing the dividend by 2% annually. So that too is another piece of information for me. The dividend growth rate is 2%. And the current value of the stock at, let's see, wait a minute. Get back over here. What is the current value of the stock at a discount rate of 5.3%? So we know that our K is 5.3%. And I think we've got everything we need. And then the only other thing we need is a formula. And if you look on your formula sheets under chapter 6, where are we here? Chapter 6. Okay, so again, it doesn't specifically say what formula to use here, but we know that we have an annual dividend that we already just got paid. We know that it's expected to grow at 2%, and we're given a discount rate of 5.3%. So we could certainly guess that we've got enough information to use the constant perpetual growth version of the dividend discount model. And that looks like this. So then, in our $1.38, 2% growth, and then 5.3% discount rate, and there's our growth rate. Let's plug in these numbers. $1.38 times 2. I get $1.40.8. Numerator, and that becomes 0.033. Let's do that division. I get 42.65 out of that. So as long as you're methodical, and I really recommend that you write things down as you read through it. You're free to write on the exam booklet. You can write on the formula sheet, whatever is convenient for you, and use that to your advantage, especially given that you've got a little over a minute per question to work through. Does that help?
Yeah.
More so of a general question, do you have some keywords that might clue you in to say, oh, use this formula? Or, if it says, like you said, annual dividend at time 0, it kind of cued us into this formula. Are there a couple words or phrases that you give us that?
It's all going to be dependent upon the question, right? So it's maybe we could look at another. Oops, what happened? Authenticate. Here we go. All right. We can look at another one of these. Probably after 8, there's some more dividend discount model, or maybe a residual income model. What is the market value of a share of stock divided by the net income per share called? No, that's not. These are all. Here's. McDuckett Incorporated generates net profit of 592. So really, to answer your question, a lot of what I do is, as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking about, okay, what information am I given, and what formulas might use that as an input to those formulas. So immediately when I see net profit, I'm thinking, okay, well, we've got net income, right? And that was 592. And has a price to book ratio of 5.2. Let me catch up here. Total assets of 2.32. Total liabilities are 1.289. Company has 560,000 shares. What is the PE? That's what I'm after. All right, so effectively, what are we going to do here? We're going to say we need some sort of price out of this. We need, in the numerator, we need price. In the denominator, we need EPS. So let's start with the one that is the more obvious one here, and that is the EPS. We know we've got a net income of 592. We know that we have shares out of 560. So 592 divided by 560, oops. 2 divided by 560. I get 1.057. All right, now we need price. We have a price up here, but we have it as a ratio, right? So this is price over book value of equity. And we could put that on a per share basis. Write it this way, per share. So where are we going to find, but I mean, in order to get this price out of this ratio, we need to get book value of equity on a per share basis. So how are we going to do that?
Total assets minus total liabilities.
Right. Perfect. So we've got total assets minus total liabilities equals total equity. And that means 2.32 minus 1.289 equal to 1. What? $1.031. All right, so now we have total equity. Now the last thing we need to do, everybody sees it? Take shares out, divided by shares out. 0.560. So I divide by 0.560 and I get 1.84. And so that is my book value of equity per share. And so what I can do is I've got P over B. I have B. So if I multiply this ratio by B, I should end up canceling that out and I should be left with price. Right? And so I'm going to take 5.2 times 1.84. I get 9.57. Now I'm almost there. I just do this division, 1.057, and I get 9.057, 9.06, which is the choice right there. So some of these are going to take more steps. I think for the most part, depending upon where you are with your studies, part of being more successful on this exam is to gain some speed. So if you can just start rocketing through this stuff. And again, back to the writing things out, I'm very much a visual learner, and most of us are. I mean, some of us less so than others, but write stuff down because it'll help you to see what you're looking at. Like this ratio, you just write it out. I think that will help to speed things along, and you'll know where you're going and know how to get to this point. Because if you just try to do all of this in your head, it's going to be too slow and you're going to make mistakes. So I really strongly recommend writing things out. Yeah.
I know we have the matching is 20% of the exam. Can you go over what the other 80% is?
That's
What
going
else
to be
is
all multiple choice.
Multiple choice.
30 questions, about 15 analytical problem solving, about 15 conceptual / definition.
Okay.
So and to answer your original question about, just as you're reading through, start writing stuff down, write down what you're looking for, and that should speed things along. And practice as well tonight. Take what you've learned up to this point and then just nail it down so that you can do this a little more quickly. That's really going to be the key. What other questions? Other chapters? 6 is definitely, a big part of the exam. 5 has got a lot of material in it. 19 and 20 probably should be somewhat of a review for you all. There are going to be questions, clearly. But 19 and 20 will be in there as well. 1, 2, and 3, probably the more difficult stuff out of that is going to be things like the margin accounts.
Will every formula we need to know be on the formula sheet?
Yes. Yes. And feel free if you're stocked or you think you need something else, feel free to raise your hand. I'm trying to answer the question, but as far as I know, everything is already on the formula sheet.
I thought 19 wasn't on it.
Pardon?
I thought 19 wasn't on it. I thought it was chapters 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 20.
No, it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 19.
I got you.
Yeah. Gotta have 19 on there.
Gotcha.
But like I said, it should be new material to almost everybody, I would say. I mean, we're talking basic econ stuff, basic accounting stuff. Out of those 2 chapters.
Yes, remind me, there's a formula book to find the stock price.
Pardon?
There's a formula for finding the stock price.
Up here on this one that I did here?
Yeah.
No formula per se, other than the fact that I know that this price over book is the price of the stock over the book value of equity. And so, I know that this ratio is equal to 5.2. And so this is the key to figuring out what the price is. So I know I've got price over book. What I need to do is multiply this ratio by the actual book value. And that'll cancel book out of the equation and leave me with just price. Is that the question you were asking? Yeah, I mean, now there are some ratios on here. So, if you're in doubt, you can look right here is the formula, is this very formula is price to book, and it's stock price over book value per share. BVPS is the way they write it in the text. I wrote it a little bit differently, sorry. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like I say, a lot of this is just about kind of keeping order of what you're doing and writing it all out. What else? Other questions? Could be conceptual, could be.
Can we go to chapter 5
Yeah,
or
sure. Absolutely.
and number 3?
Okay. What's up with this? I mentioned getting it on my laptop too. Huh, strange. Oh, I didn't get it this time. Weird. Ah, okay. So this is. Oops, what happened? All right. Is this the right one?
Yep.
Okay. So let's see. We're given the following information. We've got stock A and B. We know shares out. You know the beginning share price. You know the ending share price. You want the beginning price weighted index of these 2 stocks to be 100. Given this, what is the ending index value? All right. So. Price weighted index. All right, so a couple of key things: price, value, and equally weighted. Price weighted, we know, is 1 share of each. Right. So we want 1 share. We don't need shares outstanding, so that's extraneous information. You can just ignore that 1 column there that has that. The beginning share price of each is 35 and 22. So 35, 22. And the common way to start things off is to simply say, well, let's just add those two share prices up. So we've got 57. And oftentimes people will just divide it by the number of stocks in the index. And so we've got 57 divided by 2 is 2850. However, they're telling us actually we want the starting level not to be 2850, but we want it to be 100. So how are we going to get that to 100? So scratch this off. Scratch this off. We want this to be 100. So what's our divisor going to be?
The original price.
The 57.
57, yeah.
That should give us 100, right? Yeah. Yep. So let's do that. So we know our divisor is 57 now. That's what you want to keep going forward, unless there's a stock split or we change one of the members of the index. All right, then we have to make adjustments for that. So when we've got that as our denominator, this is going to be fixed. This numerator is what's going to change. So now let's look at the ending share prices. They're 38.23. So that gives us 61, right? So now let's take 61 divided by 57. 1.07 or 107. Yeah, and actually, 0.57. So this 0.57. Easy to shift decimals, but your intuition is right. Does that make some sense? What if this were? I guess we could use this to look at a value weighted index, right? What would the ending value be if this were a value weighted index? Let's try that. Just for grins. So we've got 1,000 shares of that, 2 of this. This one's going to be 44,000, right? And so what do we have? 9. So our total market cap of these two stocks is 79,000. So the weighting scheme is 35 over 79 goes into that stock. So 44.443 and 44 out of 79, or 1 minus that in this case. 55.7. So we put 44% of our money into stock A. We put almost 56% of our money into stock B. And so what happens when the prices change? First off, let's decide what sort of index level we want to start with, because really all we need to do is to take 79,000 and we could divide it by say 790. We start off with the level 100. Right. Now prices change, they go to 38.23. And so this changes. And we have 38,000 here. We have 46,000 here. 8 plus 6 is 1 is 84,000. So now we have 84,000 divided by 790. $106.3. So that same question had been, use a value weighted index, tell me what the ending value is. That's the way you would go about it. And now you'll see an equally weighted question.
Are we gonna be given the beginning to equal 100? Like, will we know to
Yeah.
the divisor?
And frankly, you know, if it's just maybe the question would be worded differently, it might say, what's the percentage gain on the index? Then you can pick any divisor. Doesn't matter what it is, just something simple to keep it easy. I would argue that keeping it at 1 or 10 or 100 is simpler. So here we have a 6.3% gain. The other one, we had a 7.02% gain. So once you've got the two levels, then it's just ending minus beginning divided by. Here's another question one could ask here is, suppose that, now this would actually be on the price weighted index. Suppose that stock A did a stock split, a 2-for-1. And how would you change the divisor? So that question, I don't know if you want to go over that or not, but basically what you do is, look at it real quick. So if we started off this way, and we have our, what we have here, no, that's the that was the end, so it's 35. So we've got 57 divided by 0.57. And suppose that at the end of this day, the stock A announces a 2-for-1 stock split. So the price there goes from 35 down to 17.50. Right. So this stock is going to change price to 7.50. And the way the question, oh yeah,
Why would that change the total index value when we still have the same amount of equity in the company?
that's what we're trying to avoid, right? We're trying to avoid that sort of problem. We don't want, you know, so presumably if we recalculated this, this would be what, 39.5, right? And it looked like the value had dropped dramatically, when indeed nothing happened, really, other than they did a stock split. So what our goal is to say, okay, well, we know that we want the value to stay the same. We know that we've got a new numerator. So the question becomes, what's the new divisor? And so you just solve for that. And so it's basically 39.5 divided by 100, which means the new divisor is going to be 3295. There you go. And I think that's most of the questions one could ask about this index type stuff. Yes.
That would only be for price.
Yes.
Index.
Correct. If there was a stock split for evaluated index, it would make no difference at all. We wouldn't have to do anything. That's also one of the benefits of evaluated index, is that companies can split their stocks and it has no impact on the index. We don't have to mess with it at all. What else do you see? I will tell you what, let's see, I'll have to make sure I include this in the email so everybody is up to speed. There is not going to be one of those those free cash flow valuation problems out of chapter 6. Remember the one where we had to figure out the beta for the assets, and it was step after step after step after step after step. That was one of the questions I cut. Simply because if you work that through, it might take you 5 minutes. And if you're going fast. So I figured that was not a valuable question to ask. Might still ask it on the final though. I still can answer you questions about that free cash flow model, but I won't have an analytical one. I won't give you the numbers and say, figure out the value of the equity. No other questions? I guess we're ready to head back for the study.
Trying to find one for the March.
Oh, yeah.
Chapter.
Chapter 2.
I just, one margin and then one, we have, extra, EFN, external financing. Needed,
Potential,
right,
sure,
I'm gonna go through that after the margin.
sure. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. On any of these margin questions. Okay, yeah, here we go. Here's some of the, so starting on question 9. Any of these margin questions, doing these T accounts is definitely going to be saving grace. I would make sure I keep, and a couple of key things to remember when you're dealing with a long margin. The assets are denominated in shares, right? And so the number of shares is fixed, but the dollar value of those shares is changing. The liability is also fixed. So what drives equity is changes to the price. And so the dollar value of your assets are going to go up or down as the price of the asset goes up or down respectively. Subtract off the liability and you're left with your equity stake. And then, okay, so, and that's long, right? Short margin, again, use the T accounts. The thing that is denominated in shares is not the asset. The asset is denominated in dollars, and that's fixed. What's denominated in shares is the liability. And so that means the dollar value of that liability is going to go up or down. And so as that dollar value of the liability goes up, your equity stake goes down and vice versa. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing, remember that margin is net worth, or i.e. Equity stake, divided by value of the stock. Always value of the stock, not the asset value. Always value of the stock.
So in T account, like if I open a position, a margin position, my cash that I initially put, that would be in equity.
Yes.
Okay. And then the liability is, so
how much you borrow.
So if I have a 70% initial, then that liability would be 30%.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And that's now that's in the long position, right? If you were doing a short, that's where things get a little tricky and a little more confusing. That's why the T accounts are even more valuable there, because what you're doing is you're taking 70% of the value of this position, which is 100% of your position. And that's going to be, so in your example, 70% Let's throw some numbers on this. Let's say,
Number 10 is a short problem.
oh, is it 10?
Yeah.
Be a good one. All right. Take a look at
I don't know if it's exactly what you're looking for, but
It might be. Is that, you short 600 shares of stock at 52 a share. Yeah, I think that, let's work with that one. Okay, so we short sold 600 shares at 52 a share. So my opening T account, which is going to be 600 shares. That is my liability. And that converts into a dollar value of 600 times 52. So the dollar value right now is 31,200. Now, if, well, let's, instead of going with 70, let's see what they say. Initial margin here is 75%. So I multiply that 31.2 by 0.75. That means I have to put up 23.4 as equity. So this is my equity stake at the time I opened the position. Now that means, so I put this amount of cash into my account from my money. I have borrowed 600 shares, which currently has a value of 31.2, and we borrow those shares and immediately sell them at 52 a share. So that generates another cash inflow of 31.2. So our assets are actually this plus that. So it's 54.6, right? Remember, this stays fixed unless we get a margin call and cover it. So, but for the moment, let's assume that it stays fixed. So now what's the rest of the problem? Maintenance margin of 35%. What is the amount of your total liability for this transaction as initially shown on your account balance sheet? Oh, that one, see. Got it right there. Let's do another version of this. Let's say, what happens when the share price goes from 52 to 60? So it's moving against us. We know that our equity stake is going to drop, just to kind of have rule of thumb, kind of gut checks that our numbers are working out right. So we do a new T account we've got 600 shares still, but what's the dollar value of that at 60? That's 36,000, right? And then we've got this 54.6 over here. So it's 54.6 minus 36. 6 minus 6. Wait a minute. 18.6. That's our equity stake at this point. Now, another question you could ask along those same lines is, what's your new margin? Now, I know that margin is net worth over value of the stock. That's my net worth. That's the value of the stock. So it would be 18.6 divided by 36. Or 0.517. 51.7%. So we're still not to the maintenance margin. And then, of course, if you were asked to find the price at which you hit the maintenance margin, given your time constraints, my go-to would be go to the formula. Don't bother trying to figure it out using the margin. And that formula is so, and be sure you're using it for the proper thing, right? If you're short position, that's a different formula than finding the price to margin for the long position. Make sure you pick the right formula. So this one, P star is equal to the initial margin deposit plus proceeds divided by number of shares. And that all over 1 plus the maintenance margin. 0.35 in our case. So initial was 23.4 plus the proceeds 31.2. So that's let me just erase that at it's 54.6, right? Divided by 600, and that's all over 1.35. And so let's do the math on that. Divide by 600. Divide that by 1.35. I get a price of $67.41. That would be the price to a margin call. And that makes sense, right? Because we did 60 and we got about 51%. So it'd have to be above 60.
What's the proceeds again? What's the proceeds?
Oh, proceeds would be what we generated by shorting.
Oh,
Yeah, and the way it's written in the formula is actually short sale proceeds. So it makes more sense. I just shortened it up there. Does that help? Yeah, I would say that plus the stuff out of 6, probably the trickiest in terms of formulas and analytical stuff. And remember, take that free cash flow calculation off the table. That one. That was that long, scary problem with like 7 steps in it. What else?
Can we do one of the external financial questions?
Oh, sorry. Yes, you asked about that. Let's see. Let's go to chapter. Was that 19 or 20? Yeah. Let's try to I want to know a particular number that's.
I can't look.
This one, yeah. Right here. Debt and equity are not, dividends are paid, answer says, what is the external financing assets and costs are proportional to sales? Debt and equity are not assets and costs. Proportional to sales, okay. So let's see what we can do here. All right, most recent, blah, assuming no income taxes. Next year's sales are projected to be 6,240. And so that means 6,000. And I'm going to get the percent increase that is by dividing that 6,240 by the old sales. So that so 6,240 divided by 4,800, 1.3. So that tells me that there's a 30% increase in sales. And since I know that assets and costs are going to be proportional to that, my costs are going to go up by 30%. My assets are also going to go up by 30%. Is there anything over here that I'm missing? Okay, no, just what is. All right. So let's take the costs. We're at 3180, but if we multiply 3180 by 1.3, we get 4130. are 6240. We get 2106. 2,106 for our net income. And then our assets also go up by the same amount. So right now, the assets are 14,200 times 1.3. So my total assets are now 18,460. What else do I need to know? No dividends are paid. Debt and equity do not go up. Okay. So given that there are no, so here let me just do the T account here, so that we can kind of keep things straight. We've got assets of 18,460, and we've got liabilities and equity over here. We're starting off with 9,900 and 4,300. 4,300. Okay, one thing we know, since they're not paying dividends, this entire amount of net income is going to go down into the retained earnings account. So that's going to increase this account by 2,106. So this is going to go 2,106. So that's going to be 6,406. So that's going to be the new balance of my equity account. So I'm going to subtract. Let me show you. Okay, so this is my T account, but let me show it in a slightly different fashion. I'm going to take that. I'm going to subtract off the 9,900 that I already have as liabilities. I'm going to subtract off the 4,300, which I already have as equity. I'm going to subtract off the 2,106, which is my net income that's being added to the retained earnings account under equity. And that should give me the EFN. So 18,460 minus 9,900 minus 4,300 minus 2,106. I get 2,154. Makes more sense looking at it that way.
So if there was like a retention rate of 70%, would you just take 2,106 times 0.7, the net
Yes.
income?
Yeah. If the payout was 30%, yes, correct. So 70% of that would be whatever 7.7 times that. Yeah, absolutely. Or if they give you a dollar value of the dividend, just subtract that off, and that whatever is the remainder would be added to the retained earnings. Okay. And again, the problems that you'll see on the midterm are going to be more of this order. You're not going to have a real detailed income and balance sheet. It's unnecessary. Really, the whole idea is to make sure you get the basic concepts.
This one wasn't shut down.
This is out of chapter 19. Yep. And question 3. What else? These are all good questions, because this is probably the more difficult, confusing material. Right about that right moment.
Let's
I hear
let's just
zippers.
let's just pick one random one from this top from chapter 19.
Okay.
Pick one.
About 5. Let's see what 5. Lemon Company has net income of 520, 75,000 shares of stock. If the company pays a dividend of $1.28, what are the additions to retained earnings? I think it's easy one. Well, what would we do here? So 75,000. If the company pays a dividend of $1.28, see, 75,000 times $1.28. I get 96,000. So our total dividend payment is 96,000 of the net income of 520. Just subtract off that 96. Get 424. And hopefully that's the answer they got. Yeah. And you know, on a test like this, if you're doing something like this, drop to zeros. Even that little thing is going to save you a little bit of time. There's no need to carry all those zeros along. Now, you have to be pretty careful when you do that, but certainly shortcutting with that way is helpful. I'm still available through like midnight. I'll answer emails. I might answer one after midnight, but I guarantee. But I do guarantee, you know, if you email me before midnight with a question, I'll get back to you with an answer, hopefully within the hour. And also expect that that email. I'll detail, you know, the layout as to how we're going to do it and try to maximize your time. And then I'll mention the free cash flow problem so that everybody's on the same page. All right. Other questions, comments?
Is there any residual income homework problems, you know?
Yeah, there probably are. That's out of chapter 6. Yep.
Sorry, I gotta go. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome. Thanks. See you tomorrow morning. Let's see.
Good, thanks.
Thanks. And have a good one. See you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks. Good to see you in the morning.
What'd you say? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't see any residual income ones on our homework, so I
Yeah.
don't know so far.
That doesn't mean that there won't be one on the.
That's yeah.
So I mean, the residual, here's the thing with the residual income, the big difference between that and say the dividend discount model is you need to know book value of equity, B sub 0. You need to know the K so that you can calculate what return they should be getting. So it's K times that book value of equity. That's the amount they should earn. You subtract that from the earnings, the actual earnings. The way the problems are going to be set up, that's always going to be a positive value. So you get, that's the residual part, right? And if you think about it that way, then really the formula and everything else just follows the same thing as the dividend discount. It's that value, it's that residual income, that extra divided by K minus G, because we're assuming it's a perpetuity. Add to that the book value of equity and you're done. So really very, very much the same idea as dividend discount model.
Yeah. Will we have to solve for that B sub 0 or will we be given it? Just a
Most likely you'd be given it.
okay.
Even if you had to solve for it, you'd probably be given total assets and total liabilities. One minus the other. Yeah. You got your book value. And maybe divide by shares outstanding, doing it on a per share basis.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Happy studying. I'll see you all tomorrow morning.